Who said England can't take penalties? That was England's fourth penalty shootout win, 3 of them coming under Southgate. Is it time to give him credit where it's due? Still wasn't the most exciting performance, though. Even if the Swiss defence had more holes than a block of Emmental, England still probably wouldn't have found them. I'm Stan George. This is the Green and White podcast brought to you by Argyle Life. And joining me to discuss yesterday and also look forward to the most anticipated contest involving England and Holland since the Glorious Revolution, it is Finn.
Hiya.
It's Adam.
Hello.
Hi, Adam. And it is coming back after being absent from the last one, it's Sam.
Hello, although I would say it's the most anticipated fight between England and Holland since Hamilton beat Verstappen over the line at Silverstone earlier today. That's my real England v Holland.
Fair enough. I'm not much of an F1 fan, to be honest, so you probably know more about that than I do. So let's talk about the football rather than the F1, because that would be going far outside my area of expertise. That was Southgate's 100th game in charge of England, 60th win. Only 4 managers have a better win rate. Question for the panel: which England manager has the best win rate?
Sam Allardyce with one game.
Yeah,
Easy.
one game and 1 win. I don't think we'd expect Southgate to quite match that.
Adam Lallana, the last-minute winner against Slovakia, if I remember rightly.
I think it was, yes. So we couldn't really expect Southgate to manage that, although you could say he is doing worse than his predecessor. So maybe we should be giving him more slack than we already do. It's the 3rd time that England have reached a semi under Southgate. Only 4 semi-finals England have reached in their history before Southgate took over, and hadn't reached one since the home Euros of 1996. So, is it time to give Southgate credit where it's due? 3 semis in 4 tournaments, 60% win rate. He seems to be doing a good job, doesn't he? You don't seem to agree with me, Fem.
Well, I mean, I think the tactical system has got so many holes in it. It could be a piece of, like you were saying, Emmental cheese. Like it's just
you're reusing metaphors.
Yeah. Like you said, so like it's kind of like, I don't know, man. Tournaments are about moments, and we clearly have moments. This team clearly has character. I'm not going to say if we go on and win this tournament, which is possible, that Southgate is entirely, because that would just be entirely, doesn't deserve any credit at all. But I would feel like it would mostly be sort of, aside from his tactics. I mean, before Bukayo Saka scored yesterday, we again didn't have a shot on target. And that shot from Saka was a complete moment of magic. Before they scored, I thought that he needed to make subs about 10 minutes before, because I could see Switzerland coming on to us. And I just thought they'd kind of, some of our players looked a bit leggy. And yet again, it was a reactive substitution. Rather than a proactive one, I can't say I can't say he's lucky that Saka got him out of a hole, because we've got those players, right? He deserves probably some credit for. Well, no, he definitely deserves credit for sort of changing the overall culture in the team. Now I don't believe that in previous tournaments we might have had the character to get ourselves out of some of the holes that we have done. But it's kind of, in this tournament, it's definitely been sort of beside his tactics that we are in the semi-final.
Do you not think, also, just very quickly, do keep your comments coming in, because I don't want just sort of innuendo jokes from Aaron to be the only comments that we get through the whole thing. So please keep your comments coming in, and we'll do the best to respond to them as they go on. I'm just going to bring in Adam and Sam here. Do you think he maybe deserves credit, even if the tactics are a little bit of a problem? He deserves credit for sort of instilling that never say die attitude, and kind of like it might not be pretty for England to get over the line quite often.
Yeah. Look, and I think he deserves credit enormously for the 3 previous tournaments. Part of the reason why I was so viscerally shocked and viscerally negative on the previous pods I've been on, and well, if I was on the post-Slovakia pod, I'd have been probably even more negative still, is this is wildly different to the previous tournaments under Southgate. I mean, look, we've all sort of said it was never the most tactically intricate, tactically brilliant setup in the world, but we all knew the basics and we all knew what we were doing, and every player was fully energetic, and we had a structure of how to build up play. And that is absolutely down to Southgate. Of course, it wasn't as complex as Pep Guardiola's Man City or Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool, but most international setups are nowhere near that complex. Even Spain, who's been so brilliant, their tactic is pretty much get it to Yamal on one side and Williams on the other, and whip across it to Morata, which has worked great. Interested to see how it will work with him being suspended for the semi, but that's a tangent. Southgate has not been tactically brilliant, but he has got this England team playing together. He's got a basic structure, and that's why when this tournament rolled around and we saw the complete lack of anything like that for the first 4 games, so many of us were so shocked. So actually, I think he does deserve credit, but equally, that doesn't mean that we can't call out how bad the first 4 games of this tournament were. Yesterday was a lot better, but I'm sure we'll come on to that in a later question. Well, it was better. I don't know about a lot better. But yeah, I think he deserves a lot of credit. And in terms of the never say die attitude, yeah, absolutely. How many England teams of old being 1-0 down in 90+4 would you expect it to have then scored one of the best ever goals in European tournament history to equalise? How many England sides after going 1-0 down in the 74th minute would you expect to equalise from a great 25-yard shot just 4 minutes later? It doesn't happen ordinarily. So yeah, deserves credit in some ways, but that doesn't mean the previous criticism was unwarranted, because it very much was warranted.
Adam, do you agree with that?
Yeah, in many ways. I look back at the previous 3 tournaments, and it makes me feel that Southgate's reign is going to be looked back in many, many years to come as a positive. The way that he's managed to turn England around, and the way that he's got that belief in the squad and the enjoyment of playing for England that was not present for pretty much most of my life before. I wouldn't say. With that being said, in this tournament specifically, it does feel like we're in the semi-finals in spite of the manager, not because of the manager. Whereas in previous tournaments, it's felt very different. It's that I'm not entirely sure I can give the manager credit for his players getting him out of jail on a couple of occasions, because I mean, if the plan was go and score a last-minute equaliser with a bicycle kick, then fair enough. But I doubt very much that we'd have liked that to be necessary. And very similar yesterday. I've criticised Southgate in these last few weeks. That's not to take away from an awful lot of good that he's done in his, let's call it, first 100 games as England manager, and hopefully gets to 102nd and wins it. And as I say, there's a lot of areas where he deserves an awful lot of credit for what he's done in England. I'm just not necessarily sure at the moment that this tournament is one. He's still got a week, ultimately, to change that, and it would top off his legacy, quite frankly. But right now, it does feel a little bit like, as I said before, we're here, we're in the semi-final. It feels a little more by luck than judgment, and it feels a little more in spite of the tactics and the manager in place than because of, which I don't necessarily think was the case previously.
No, fair enough. And it is sort of strange to think that we could be sat here in a week's time watching England play in a Euros final with the way that the football has not been particularly exciting through the tournament. So we'll just move on to talking about the tactics yesterday. So a little switch in formation, if not a switch in personnel, moving to a back 3. I think the only surprise was seeing Kieran Trippier play as a left wing back. I think more people thought that Saka would be on the left and Trippier or even Trent Alexander-Arnold would be on the right. Certainly in terms of, I think, the press and the off-the-ball shape, I think that there was an improvement. But as Finn said, the shot from Bukayo Saka, the equaliser, was the only shot on target, and that came the 80th minute. Do you think that the sort of change in formation worked? Would you like to see that formation be played against the Netherlands in the next round?
I certainly think it would be. It was better than the dross that we had before. So I think
it's quite a low bar, isn't it?
Yeah. Whilst it wasn't a great improvement, I do think there were certain parts of it which functioned a lot better than the 4-2-3-1. Mainly the press, as you were saying, we actually looked like we could get in their faces yesterday a bit more. To be honest, though, I'm getting to, and I would play that against the Netherlands because they play a 3 at the back system, I believe, as well.
No, they play 4 at the back, or they have this tournament.
Oh, right, okay. They just always sub on Van der Ven, right? Okay, that makes sense, right?
Yeah, they sort of, I guess, it's kind of a little bit hybrid because
for them.
Yeah, they sort of play Ake and Van der Ven as a left back. And obviously they tend to be quite sort of narrow and defensive because obviously they played a lot as centre back in their career. But it's more of a back 4 than a back 3.
Right, my bad. But yeah, in general, I think I still would, because I think the 4-2-3-1 just hasn't worked. But I'm sort of giving up hope that we're going to improve enough, really. And I do think if we get to the final, it will again be because of moments. But we have plenty of players like that. Because I just think like Phil Foden just hasn't worked this tournament. He keeps being picked.
Yeah, I agree with that. I can't really believe that he's played so much and he's been so poor through the whole tournament.
Everyone was like, well, why have you dropped Jack Grealish for Anthony Gordon? And Anthony Gordon has played about 2 minutes. And it's just, I just don't understand it. It's like, and then you've got Kieran Trippier, who hasn't disgraced himself defensively, but gives us absolutely no width going forward. He's allergic to using his left foot. And that means every time we go down the left side, we have to go backwards and then to the right-hand side. And thankfully, yesterday, Bukayo Saka had their right back on toast. But I don't. If that wasn't the case, we literally had no attacking outlet otherwise. I thought Kane was really poor yesterday. I wouldn't drop Kane, just put it out there, but I thought he was really poor yesterday. I thought lack of movement, particularly when Saka got into those positions a lot of times, was really, really poor. And if that was somebody like Ivan Toney or Ollie Watkins and he'd started instead of Kane, we'd be like, why is he starting instead of Kane, So it's kind of like... yeah, he needs to buck up his ideas a little bit because we know.
Actually, I would start Ivan Toney. I wouldn't start Harry Kane against the Netherlands.
And I can't really disagree with that. It's just obviously we know Harry Kane is. If a chance does fall to him, he probably will score it. But the only problem being is I feel like if a chance does fall to him, it's going to be a coincidence rather than one of his own making, because this tournament, I mean, we can talk about the lack of runners in behind, which hinders his game, but he just looks like a player that is sort of
very tired,
maybe even dare I say it, on his sort of not way out, but you know what I mean. He's not the Harry Kane of maybe 2-3 years ago, and maybe playing in the Bundesliga has sort of hindered. You don't have, no disrespect to Bundesliga, but it's nowhere near as high intensity league as Premier League, is it? So I don't know.
Yeah, good, well done. So Sam, Adam, what do you make of that? So formation, generally a success, although personnel. I mean, we talked about Foden and Kane, and certainly I don't think Finn was impressed, and I'm not impressed either. I wouldn't start either of them against the Netherlands personally.
I certainly wouldn't start Foden. I think he's had 5 chances and he's had one semi-decent game of the 5, which oddly was the Slovakia game. As bad as we were as a team that game, I thought he had some good pass and move moments. He linked up play quite well. He was poor in the first 3 group games, and he was very out of the game, I think. Obviously, in the quarterfinal yesterday against Switzerland, he didn't really show for the ball very much, and he was played, in a more central role, which is what everyone's been calling out for, but he's still not really done it. So I wonder if you have to say that to an extent, it's just on him. Maybe it isn't just him being failed by the setup or failed by the tactics, and maybe there's some extent to that.
It's not as though he's performed really for England in any tournament.
No, no, not really. Obviously 2021 he got dropped for Rashford to come in and give us a bit more cutting edge. 2022, I think he didn't play a whole load, did he? And I think this is the one tournament he has been given a real thorough chance. He's started every game, he's played deep into every game in terms of minutes. I mean, he's not really taken the opportunity. Like I say, he had one decent enough game of the 5, but when your best game of the 5 is like a 6 out of 10 and the other games are like a 3 out of 10, 4 out of 10, that's not good enough, unfortunately for him. I would drop Foden, I should say, for the semi-final. Kane is a tougher one because naturally he is Harry Kane, and he's in all the other tournaments he's been absolutely fantastic for England. I just feel with this new setup, I think I spoke on the post-Slovenia podcast and maybe on the other one as well about how with Harry Kane, even if he's still very, very good, Wayne for Kane, well...
Probably Zealand is the biggest obstacle.
Yeah, he does have a British passport, but I think he's played too many games to change his declaration, which is terribly sad for England, of course. We'd all love to have Ben Wayne playing for us, wouldn't we? But we wish him very well this season, of course. It's going to be his year. I'm calling it right now. Anyway, quite aside from Ben Wayne, I've said about Harry Kane, and I don't think he's necessarily on the decline, although maybe he is slightly on the decline. But I think, at the end of the day, Bundesliga, it's still a very competitive league. You don't score a goal a game or more without being a good striker. But he's not the most suited for this system. Like we said on previous podcasts, he's worked so well when he's had Sterling, Rashford running in behind, so that he can drop deep and he can be that sort of number 9.5, if you like, a number 9 who can also play as a number 10. And with the players we have now, the attacking midfielders who are creators more than they are runners, he can't play that 9.5. And if he does, he's not very good at it because there aren't the people getting on to what he wants to do. And incidentally, he just looks a bit slow and a bit leaden in his running. He had to come off injured in extra time. I wonder if he might have been preserving himself carrying a knock anyway, because yes, I know he has the kind of bit with age in terms of pace and power, but he just looked really slow in that game. He just didn't look like he could go above that jogging pace, and that's, for all that Harry Kane's never been the quickest in the world by any means, he was unusually slow. It was like watching a sort of a lower league striker trundling about at times.
Not even that. He didn't even move. Like Saka would get the ball
exactly
behind the penalty spot. It's like,
yeah, and that's just not him. That's just not him at all. What was that? Sorry, Stan?
Or stand in the middle of the pitch.
Yeah, and that is just not him. He's always dropped deep, but he's always dropped deep for a purpose. He's never just dropped deep and just stood out the way. So I think something's not right with him. The argument will be just playing because he's Harry Kane and he's got that brilliant performance in him and he can get a goal out of thin air, and I get that. But what a player to have to bring off the bench if we're drawing or losing to the Netherlands.
My case, kind of for Tony as opposed to Kane, is like, do you think Ivan Toney's a better player than Harry Kane? Like, of course he isn't. Tony's a very good player, but he's not better than Harry Kane, and I don't think anyone would argue that. It's that Kane can't do what this England team needs a striker to do. We're quite direct. Tony's very good at winning stuff in the air. Kane isn't so much. He prefers the ball into feet. We don't have a lot of pace up front. Kane's not very quick. Tony is quite quick. There's just no pressure being applied on the defence by Kane because he just sort of aimlessly dropping into midfield, and it just means that England have no outlet. So you can obviously say, oh, it's Harry Kane, but sometimes you've got to make the sacrifice and think that actually, tactically, Ivan Toney's better for this team than Harry Kane is. And I agree with you that obviously if you need a goal, get Harry Kane on the pitch. I will say that his big game, I mean, I don't know how much this means, but his big game record at club level and for England is not brilliant. So there's kind of maybe that to weigh up as well. But yeah, he doesn't offer tactically what this England team needs from a striker as much as Ivan Toney does.
It's kind of crazy that I'm just imagining like myself in like 2018 or 2019 meeting like a time traveler and coming back and telling me that we'd be calling for Ivan Toney to start in a Euro semi-final over Harry Kane, when Harry Kane was scoring about 30-odd goals a season for Tottenham, and Ivan Toney was playing alongside Lee Tomlin for Peterborough in League One. I'm just imagining how that conversation would go, that not even 6 years, like 5.5 years down the line, we're calling for Ivan Toney to start in a Euro semi-final over Harry Kane. I think I'd have absolutely,
maybe Lee Tomlin starting over Phil Foden as well.
He's never been the same since Ryan Edwards got inside his head at Peterborough that time and got him sent off. But that notwithstanding, yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, I think it's time for a bold decision, and I think we've got to think, yes, even if we do get back to the level, and I think the Switzerland game was a better performance. It wasn't a great performance. I want to make that quite clear, but it was better than the previous four. I agree with that. We actually had passing structure to an extent. We actually looked like we were controlling large parts of the game. I thought the last 15 minutes of extra time were absolutely shocking. If there was anyone going to score in that time, it was Switzerland. But yeah, that last 15 probably drag it down from a 6 out of 10 to a 5 out of 10, in my opinion. But a 5 out of 10 is still better than the 4 games that came before it. So not great, better, growing into the tournament, maybe. But even if we are going into, and even if we play a bit better again against the Netherlands, even if we put in a 6 or a 7 out of 10, which I think is very plausible, we've still got to ask ourselves what is going to make this England team get over the line in a way that the previous England teams didn't. And I think making that very bold, very brave decision of Ivan Toney might be what does it, in my view.
Just very quickly, the problem I have is, and I'd love for him to prove me wrong, Southgate has always been, and particularly more this tournament, I think, he's always been conservatism over anything else. And I think, I'm not necessarily calling him a bottler, but what I do think is he will have in his head, oh, I don't start Harry Kane, we lose to the Netherlands 1-0, and it's like, well, he should have started Harry Kane. And that's the feeling I get with Southgate. He's that type of manager that
he's sort of like not. He'll sort of like worries more about the sort of perception than
perception and what the other team's going to do rather than actually what our players can do.
No, fair enough. I mean, as someone who trained as a behavioural economist, you're kind of speaking my language here, Finn, about the sort of like social pressures of why people don't make rational decisions.
Yeah, I do think that it's an outside conversation, but I do think it's a real thing, you know. But
no, it is, but I don't particularly want to get everyone or get me started on what I did for my master's thesis, because I'm sure that the listeners probably don't want to hear that. Anyway, Adam, you've been sat there patiently for a while, shall we say. A lot of topics that we've talked about, I think, since you last spoke. But what would you like to have you say about?
Yeah, let me try and cover a couple of things. So if I look at the Harry Kane situation, it brings me back to my favourite selection dilemma that I feel like I often go back to is the second leg of the 2015 playoff semi-final when Zach Antzer and Ryan Brunt were in form and Luis Alessandro and Ruben Reid weren't. So you had the situation of, do we pick the ones that are perhaps not quite what we consider excellent players but are in form, or do we pick the tried and tested Harry Kane / Ruben Reid, Luis Alessandro? I'm sure Harry Kane's delighted to have been compared to the two of them. Sheridan ultimately played the safe option and it didn't happen. So, hey, maybe it's time to to not play the safe option. Do I think Gareth Southgate is closer to a John Sheridan in that regard? Yeah, I think he almost certainly is. And I think we almost certainly will see Kane start. Fitness dependent. I mean, I can't imagine him colliding with his own manager is going to be enough to rule him out of the Euro semi-final, but you never know. So fitness dependent, I imagine he will start. I'd like to see Tony start, and I suppose you do have the option of if you are going to drop Foden, perhaps going for two up front, you could play both of them. But that's one option of many. If I look at the formation more generally and did it work, my thoughts are yes and no. In that first half, I think we got an impression of exactly how a Southgate team wants to function. Keeping the game relatively closed off, pressing man to man, which matching their formation allowed us to do, and hoping that our key players or our big moment players delivered a big moment. And we weren't too far away from that happening. Xhaka puts an excellent tackle in on Manu just before halftime. There's every chance that if he gets a clear shot away there, he opens the score, and that's kind of the perfect Southgate half. And if that was the way that the game went, I'd generally be absolutely fine with it. The problem is in the second half, we dropped straight back into the same old. And I don't know what changed. I don't know, was it tiredness for the pressing? Was it something with the mentality? Because as soon as the second half got started, we had a couple of good minutes and then dropped off. And I mean, hey, anyone could see that Switzerland goal coming a mile off. And
everyone except the manager, it seemed.
Well, exactly. But I think I've given up hope on asking for substitutions before the 70-minute mark now. So, it's tough because, as I said before, if that first half performance was matched throughout the game, not only would I have been happy, we'd probably win the game in 90 minutes, in all honesty. But that's not what happened, and we're sat here thinking, well, has the formation really worked? I think. I don't know if Stan, you were the one who said it, or whether I'm giving you credit when it's due somewhere else, but it's like a very low bar that had to be cleared, in a sense of, was this our best performance of the tournament? Yes, undoubtedly. But would it be in, say, the top 3 or 4 performances that Spain or Germany would put in? Absolutely not. So there does have to be a bit of perspective both ways there. I think the formation worked in that sense, and I'd be surprised if we departed from it. But that doesn't mean that we're not left with some questions, and the selection one is absolutely pertinent. I'd lean towards dropping Kane, but I think we're likely to see him is based on who the manager is.
I can honestly see him not changing anything again. Like, it's got to that point. It's
yeah. I mean, there's the conversation as well about what happens at the back, because I know it's not been mentioned yet. I thought Ezri Konza certainly didn't have a bad game. He didn't look out of place. I think for my money, I'd like to see Gahey come back in. But can I see us also going into the game with 0 changes because one hasn't been enforced? Possibly. I mean, hey, let's not forget the only change we made in that game. Yes, we changed the shape. The only personnel change was enforced by Gahey's suspension. I mean, for the first minute of the game, I had to look twice and make sure that we had actually changed shape, particularly when I saw Saka out on that side, because the personnel could easily have fitted into what Southgate had played before. So, yeah, I don't think changes are likely. Finn, if 0 changes are made, I wouldn't be shocked. I suspect Gahey probably does come back in, but I don't think that he's going to fiddle with very much. As much as I feel like we all think he should, to at least some extent.
Yeah, talking about 0 changes in England, you really don't know whether we're talking about this week about Keir Starmer or Gareth Southgate. Anyway, let's. You mentioned the back 3 and personnel. So obviously, Konza coming in for the suspended Mark Gahey was the only change that was made to the personnel. I think there's generally been a consensus that Gahey has been one of our better players at the tournament. Certainly, there have been less issues or fewer issues with the defence than there have been with the attack. And Gahey has been sort of at the heart, I think, of a defence that's generally been pretty solid. But Konza came in and looked relatively untroubled by a Swiss team that admittedly didn't have a huge amount going forward. On the other side, though, Walker looked very shaky, very suspect. So, is there maybe a argument that it should be Gahey coming back in, but maybe for Kyle Walker instead of Ezri Konza?
Dead
Sam,
right
you're-
for me.
Absolutely an
Yeah.
argument.
I think Walker had a bad game and a bad tournament. I actually think it's controversial to say. I think some of the way he praise have been a little overboard. He's been good enough. He's been fine, but he's also made quite a few sloppy errors. We've probably made about one in each game that cost us quite a dangerous position. So I don't think he merits coming back in over Konza, who actually I think had a pretty flawless game. Actually, I would say he probably does merit coming back in over Walker, just because I think Walker's had a really bad tournament. I'm sorry to sort of make it about the Slovakia game because I wasn't on that podcast, but that moment when he played that ball to Stones that just let their player have a shot from goal at 40 yards out, I think I nearly put my fist through the wall. And that just summed up his tournament. He's been very lax, very sloppy. Defensively, too many mistakes. Going forward, his end product, very poor. He's just not looked at all like the Kyle Walker of multiple title winning seasons for Man City. He's not even looked like the Kyle Walker of multiple solid tournaments for England, and it's a shame, really. But I wonder if now, with him being now 34, he's maybe lost that. Or I think he's definitely lost half a yard of his pace, which is natural at 34.
I still think he's one of the quickest players in the team, mind. And
yeah.
I think I would generally agree, but I think if he's always been somebody to not rely on his pace, but his defensive positioning has never been great. And maybe now that he has lost that yard of pace, I agree with you, it's kind of starting to show. However, against Gakpo, I still think Walker is probably the guy that we have in defence who can keep up with him generally.
I get it, and I get it for a matchup. If we were playing any of the other two teams, I'd be more confident in Guehi to come in over Walker. The fact that it's Gakpo as a matchup is kind of what makes me think maybe he did such a brilliant job against Kylian Mbappe in that France quarterfinal, didn't he? He had Mbappe quiet all game. I know we lost, but Walker against Mbappe was totally dominated by Kyle Walker. And it kind of makes me think, can he really have declined that much in 18 months? And he's had a pretty good season for Man City. I wouldn't say he's one of their better players from when I've watched Man City play, but he certainly had a solid enough season. So maybe he can regain that level. I think I would just go for Guehi at right centre-back, because Guehi's no slouch. He's pretty quick on his feet as well. So I think I'd go for Guehi, but I can see Finn's point as to why you'd go for Walker, but I would certainly play Konza over on the left, but I think he had a cracking game.
I think
we all agreed that Konza would stay in the team. Sorry, Adam, you go on.
No, yeah, I think. Well, I'm sure we're all agreed. As I said, I think Konza certainly didn't look out of place by any stretch. With Finn, I think I agree, and I think that's the one point possibly in Walker's favour. I think in the vast majority of games, or it's the vast majority of opponents we could face in this tournament, based on form. And yeah, I mentioned after the Slovakia game that I thought for a large period Kyle Walker put in a genuine 1 out of 10, and he wasn't particularly much better yesterday either. So I would absolutely look to other options. I just think for this one with the Gakpo threat, if you want to call it that, I was going to say exactly the same thing as Sam in the sense that he did very well in that quarterfinal against Kylian Mbappe. So you've got to have that sort of impression that he has the ability to do the same thing again. And
you had a better view of it than we did, I think, Adam, didn't you?
Well, yeah, I'm not sure about that. I was pretty pleased with my view of, obviously, I know I've mentioned before the penalties being at the other end. But yeah, I did catch a fair bit that one, and yeah, he did. He very much did put in a good performance. So I know I've spent 5 minutes before saying Southgate needs to be a little bit bold. I think the cautious option and possibly the right option is to keep Walker in. But that's not to say if we rock up to the game and realise he's not starting that I'm going to say what sort of decision's that, because generally speaking, Walker hasn't earned his place at all. And if he were to play, even though I'm saying I think he should, it would only be on past glories. So, yeah.
Do you think Southgate? being a sort of naturally conservative manager, as we've talked about, will play Walker.
Yeah, I'm almost. I mean, to be fair, I remember being on on this podcast after the Slovakia game, thinking that even that simple change of formation would have been too much for Southgate. So he's already got a little bit of credit from me for actually making some sort of change. But yeah, I'd be very surprised. I mean, particularly with the conversation about Kane. I mean, am I correct in thinking that Walker is currently vice captain of this side? Have I missed anybody on that one? I don't know. Either way, if he if there's conversation about one, I'd be gobsmacked if he didn't play at least one of them. Let's put it that way. And I'd be much more surprised if Walker was dropped than if he played.
Yeah, interesting point from Gaz, who says that we need Walker's pace against Gakpo or Lamau or Mbappe. So whoever we play in the final, if we get there, maybe the sort of extra pace of Walker will be useful. Another thing that Gaz said, though, which I didn't really agree with, he said the 5 worst games of the tournament have all involved England. And I think he must not have been watching as many France or Portugal games as I have, because they've been some stinkers. Although watching Ronaldo embarrass himself has been quite entertaining. I'll just put that out there.
Ronaldo was box office again, but for all the reasons he wouldn't want to be. So that's been fun.
Yeah,
I'm gonna put it out there now that, and I'm gonna make myself look like an idiot, maybe. But if we get to the final and we play France, we beat them. Just because I think they don't function much better than us, and they actually have slightly more ego than we do. And I think they could just stroll into that game thinking that how they've played in this tournament is good enough as well. So. Yeah, I haven't with them at all, to be honest.
You know what? I've just had this increasing feeling, more and more growing since the game yesterday, that we're going to do it, just because we just seem to keep finding a way. And I also think, and I've said this privately in group chats, and I'll share it with the listeners, I think it would just be hilarious if this is the year we finally do it. Like all the previous years, certainly 2018 and 2021, and to a lesser but still significant extent 2022 as well. The hype around England was all over the country. Everyone was singing Three Lions, World in Motion. It was all blaring out. It was a party atmosphere. There's been none of that this time because we've been so rubbish. There's been none of that level of excitement and sort of maybe there's stuff with the election as well. It's distracted us a bit, but there's been none of that sort of shared collective joy of England going deep into a major tournament. And I just feel it would be deeply sort of darkly ironic if the one year we actually win it, it's the one year where everybody's miserable about the team. And I sort of feel the Lords of Sod are destining that to happen.
It's very Portugal 2016 vibes. Like it's a system with good players that doesn't function that greatly and has been decent in defence but quite boring going forward.
Yeah, and just sort of gradually finding our way into the tournament very, very slowly but surely. I just think it will happen. I think maybe I'm jumping the gun with predictions, but I think we'll find a way past Netherlands. I think we'll win a game in 90 minutes for the first time since Serbia. And you know what? I think France will do it against Spain. I think Spain have been the best team at the tournament, but how often do you see the best teams not win tournaments? Often. And I just think it will throw them off a bit with Morata being suspended, because that has been their real tactic. Get those two quality, quick wingers, Yamal on the right side, Williams on the left, get them running into the box, get them crossed into the box. And Morata is a pure battering ram. He may not score a load himself, but he's a brilliant presence and he enables balls to fall in the right places. They don't really have anybody like that I can think of they can bring in. I think there's some suggestion in the Spanish media that it might be Ferran Torres who plays the number 9, who I think is a fine player, but he's very much not what Morata is, very much doesn't do what Morata does. And I think that, Stan's showing the camera's England shirt there. I just think that...
I noticed up and they came off briefly.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. Well, you should have started it out. I just think that Spain without Morata and maybe with Torres, so I think it's a better supplementary player than he is the number 9. I don't think they're going to find it easy against France. Their quality might show through, but I just think France have got that tournament know-how, that bit of grit. I think they'll edge past Spain in another very boring game. I think it will be an England-France final, and I think we're going to do it. That's a complete reversal. I said we'd lose to Slovakia. I said we'd lose to Switzerland. and I think we're going to do it. It's heart above head, but it's also after the Sod's Law, because I do think that it would be bittersweet if the one year we win it, it's the 1 year where everybody hates the team. I feel that was just one of those funny things that's bound to happen.
I think the other funny thing now is that after we've managed to boil the you-know-what of Stoke Twitter and Ipswich Twitter, we're now going to go out and be clipped up and be viral in /France/Spain. So that'll be fun. Your face all over the Spanish media, Sam. That's what we've got to look forward to.
They'll never do as good a job as the Stoke fans did. I take my hat off to them. They were very amusing, I have to say, and I look forward to.
John
the August
got
game against them.
repeatedly harassed. Well, not harassed. I think that's maybe a bit harsh, but repeatedly identified as the podcast gobshite
off YouTube. Somebody told me a story that when he was in the pub before the game, he overheard a Stoke fan from across the bar, and I won't use the word. It's that the expletive off YouTube.
Do you know what the expletive off YouTube is in Dutch?
No, but I'm sure you can tell me.
Well, I don't, but I'll be able to look it up, and maybe that'll be what you will be in a couple of days' time. Anyway, Gaz says you're on the sauce. Probably not on a Sunday night. I think it's just Coca-Cola, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I can confirm there's no vodka or rum or any other substance.
It could be well be Guinness. Looking at that,
Right, fizzy Guinness.
I mean, I think Stan knows what. Yeah, it's very flat Guinness. I think Stan knows my taste in alcohol, and he knows I would never drink Guinness.
Guinness is flat anyway.
Yeah, but you normally see a bit of froth along the top, do you not?
Yeah, like a head. Yeah, no, fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Anyway.
Destroyed with facts and logic.
Yeah, I didn't know what you were talking about. Anyway.
Right.
I'm a Guinness drinker and you're not. Anyway, we'll move on to the penalty shootout rather than having an argument about Guinness. So, yeah, not the best game, but I was pretty confident before the penalty shootout. I think I was in a group chat with Sam, and I think I said, I think it would win this before it happened. A lot of players in that England team who take penalties regularly for their clubs, Cold Palmer, Ivan Toney, with that ridiculous sort of staring down the goalkeeper as he took his penalty, which is possibly the coldest thing I've ever seen, I think. And I don't know as well if you saw it, but on Jordan Pickford's water bottle, there was basically instructions of which way to dive for each player in the Swiss team who were likely to take a penalty. So I don't know whether you really shared my confidence that England were going to win that penalty shootout, and whether if England get to another penalty shootout that actually our historical reputation might not be fair, and actually we're favourites to win if it goes to penalties against the Netherlands or in the final.
I think confidence might be the word that I wouldn't have used, simply for the fact that we've been scored too many times before. I get where you're coming from, though. We are in much better shape to tackle a penalty shootout than we ever have been. I just wondered going into it whether the added pressure of it being such a huge game would hinder us somewhat, and thanks goodness it didn't. I mean, I think that's where a lot of credit has to go to the coaches and everyone in the background for getting us set up for that sort of situation, because we don't need reminding of what our record on penalties is like, and it's not to say we're going to win every time, but
we are now 2-0 against Switzerland on penalties after the Nations League third place playoff as well.
Pickford scored a penalty in that one.
Yeah, I mean, no one can doubt how well we take the penalties against specifically the Swiss. So if anyone comes at us with that, we've got all the answers. But it was clearly something that had been worked on in terms of the way they prepared for the shootout itself. And particularly, I mean, it did nothing for the nerves, but the way that everybody seemed to take a breath and a moment before they started their run up this time just to get themselves calm and in the right frame of mind. And and of course, some wonderful penalty technicians in the likes of Ivan Toney, as Stan, you said, and Gaz, as you said in the comments. So, yeah, I think possibly against the Dutch, perhaps that would also be a route and an option, because I feel like I may be completely wrong, but I don't necessarily think the Dutch record on penalties is great either. So perhaps we would find that we have an edge on that one, and maybe we'll get to within a kick of winning it, and Peter Drury will just shout the Netherlands for some reason. Yeah, a classic. Who remembers? But yeah, I think
I enjoyed it.
yeah, we got there eventually. I'd be a lot more confident, because yesterday was one of those where it felt like the game. Well, of course, it felt like the game was drifting, and it felt like we were playing for penalties at one point, and it felt absolutely idiotic that we were playing for penalties, given how we know we usually crumble. So the fact that we've got that win, everybody scored, and we've got that confidence. Hey, if we do go to a semi-final shootout with the Dutch, then who knows? Maybe confidence will be the word. We'll see.
And just very quickly, I've had a text come in from a Patreon subscriber who's a listener who may be a member of my family, who has just texted me saying that he lip read before the penalty shootout when Southgate was numbering them. He said Pickford number 7. So who knows, if against the Netherlands or in the final we get to a shootout and it goes to the 7th or 8th penalty, we might see Jordan Pickford score the winning penalty for England in a Euros final. Who knows? That's what I've been told. I've not watched it back, but apparently Southgate said Pickford was number 7 for the penalty taking before the penalties were taken. So it's my 2 pennies worth.
Always right, particularly if they have the surname down. So
absolutely agree.
I think that we'll go on and never stop if Jordan Pickford scores a winning penalty. Finn?
Ironically, I think Kane currently, even though if he was on the pitch, he'd be the one to take the penalty, unless Palmer was on the pitch maybe, and then there would be a debate. Kane's probably the 3rd or 4th best penalty taker in the squad based on who takes. Well, I know he's a brilliant penalty taker and he's taken many, but you look at Palmer, Toney, and even Bellingham. I mean, I don't think the guy's he hasn't taken that many, but you just never feel like he's going to miss, you know. And ever since that, ever since the France penalty in the World Cup, it's always like, is Kane gonna, you know? But maybe that's just me. But I do think it's kind of ironic now, like for a nation that has been so notoriously poor on penalties, we probably have at least 5 or 6 of the best penalty takers in Europe.
Yeah, so
I was just going to say, what you say with Kane is completely fair. I look at his record. Obviously, I've mentioned the one I was at the other end of when he put it over the bar of France. There's also, in the last years, yes, he scored his penalty in the shootout, but he took a pretty terrible penalty in the semi-final. He was very lucky to get a rebound on. So, I mean, yeah, we're in a situation where, of course, if we get to a shootout, you'd have to trust him to step up. But I think when he went off and Toney came on with penalties looming, I didn't necessarily think it was a huge loss to our squad for the shootout, and obviously so it proved. So we've got depth in penalty takers, which feels very strange to say.
Southgate did say that explicitly. Ivan knows that's one of the reasons why we took him. So
yeah, and if you look at Ivan Toney's penalty record over his career, he scored 30 and missed only twice, which was almost sort of akin to that famous Matt Letizia penalty record, where I think he only missed once. Hopefully that doesn't bode for what Ivan Toney will be getting up to after his career. But it definitely shows that he's a very good penalty taker. I don't think Palmer's ever missed one.
That was exactly what I was going to say. He's taken far fewer, but I think Palmer actually has a 100% record on all penalties taken, which is very impressive indeed.
Yeah, they don't call him Cold Palmer for nothing.
I also loved how he was the only player not to hesitate at all. It's almost like he's just too zoned in, or like not enough going on in his brain to ever be nervous. It's like he runs up, does the job, and that's it. And here's one of the and I want to say all 5 of them are brilliant penalties. And I think it would be remiss not to specifically mention Bukayo Saka because I think we were all terrified running up when he ran up. Not terrified he was going to miss because, I think he's clearly improved his penalty technique since then, and it was a very different circumstance, and the penalties for Arsenal have been very good. So not terrified he was going to miss as such, but terrified about what the fallout would be if he did miss.
Yeah, it would just been a really sad moment for him, wouldn't it?
It would. There would have been a lot of abuse and yeah.
Just to sort of, even taking that aside, although there probably would have been, you're probably right, it's sort of sad to say, it would just have been, just on a human level, like a really sad moment for him had he missed.
It would have been. Oh, it would have been. And it was so good to see him get that redemption narrative because no player has ever missed in a penalty shootout twice for England. That's never happened to anybody. And he would have been the first one if he had. And like the incredible moment, it would have been so sad for him if he had. And I think we were all nervous, but it was a brilliant penalty from him. And that joy and that relief in his face was incredible to see after. More happy for him than anyone else at the full time. And what a brilliant game he had yesterday. He was, like I say, we were better yesterday than in the other games, but a lot of that was Saka being on it. I think he's had a poor tournament. Because I think they all have, really, apart from one or two. He's had a poor tournament up to yesterday, very poor in the first 4 games. But I think his performance yesterday was actually probably the best any of our attacking midfielders have played in the tournament. Foden had a decent game against Slovakia. Bellingham had a good game against Serbia. And obviously Slovakia, he did that one absolutely ridiculous goal at the end and then not a lot else. But in terms of a consistent performance, and I'm sorry, I've got a cold, I'm sorry if my voice is breaking up. In terms of that consistent performance from minute 1 to 120, Saka was solidly very good all throughout that game, and capped it off with that penalty. So yeah, great for him.
The last thing I'd like to say about the Switzerland game is if Luke Shaw is fit to play 45 minutes, can we please have him on the pitch? Just because, especially for our attacking output. I didn't think Eze was brilliant when he came on in extra time. He tried things, but none of it really came off. And I was kind of always a little bit concerned when the ball came into the box, whether he was going to win it at the back post. However, just Shaw wants to overlap. Kieran Trippier doesn't do that. No matter if Kieran Trippier can't use his left foot. Like he doesn't usually. He quite often just doesn't overlap in general. So even just Shaw didn't get the ball a lot. And I don't think he did loads like yesterday, but those 1 or 2 times where he took about the attention of 1 or 2 defenders, which allowed Eze to cut inside, which yes resulted in nothing, is more fluidity on the left side than we've had in the whole tournament. So. I think if he's fit to play 45 minutes, even if it's the first half, I'd start him. No,
fair enough. Should we talk a little bit about the Dutch game just before we go? We won't keep Sam too long with his cold. So the Dutch in the tournament, not been the most impressive side, I think, a bit like England, certainly in terms of performances through the first few rounds of the tournament. Then Spain really are the outstanding team in the semi-final. Beat Turkey by 2-1 in the last round. Went 1-0 down, 2 goals in the second half, turned it around for them. They're a team that seems to have quite a lot of character, but maybe not the best personnel, although Cody Gakpo, after a bit of a mixed bag season for Liverpool, has been a very good player at this tournament and has really impressed. So tactically, they're a team that sort of plays a 4-2-3-1 system.
Well,
I think you've cut out there, Stan.
Oh no, am I back?
Yeah, you're back. You finished it that they play a 4-2-3-1 system. That was when we last heard you.
Yeah. With 4-2-3-1 system with Depay as number 9, although they did bring on Wout Weghorst at half-time of the Turkey game. It seemed to turn them around. And sort of generally through the tournament, Weghorst has been a bit better as a sort of focal point, with Depay a little bit deeper. So maybe we'll have the big 6'5" Dutchman at the for our centre backs to deal with in the next round. Anyway, how are we feeling about the Dutch game? Do we think we'll be able to win that? Do we think it'll be the toughest game yet? Do we think we're sort of suited to play against a team like that?
I would say it will be the toughest game yet, because I do think they are better than Switzerland slightly. Switzerland are not to be sniffed at because they beat. I'm not sure that's something that should be on our screen. Interesting comment from somebody there. It's like heavy fingers on the comment button from Stan. Goodness me, we're attracting a diverse audience, aren't we? Sorry, that's rather put me off my point. If you're an audio listener, you're very lucky. Anyway, sorry about that. Anyway, as I was saying, in the Netherlands, I think they're better than Switzerland. I think Switzerland have played well against Italy and Germany. They did okay against England, though I think the Italy game took a bit out of them, maybe. I think Netherlands are that level up. They have been inconsistent, but they've also been capable of some real quality. Obviously they were unlucky against Austria. Austria were very good, but I think Netherlands sort of dominated the game and sort of lost 3-2. They were very good against Romania. I know Romania aren't a great side, but Netherlands absolutely battered them. Very, thoroughly good performance. And against Turkey, as much as Turkey were excellent and really took them to the sword, Netherlands had that brilliant 20-25 minute spell where they just absolutely wiped the floor with Turkey in the second half of the game. So I do think that with Netherlands, they are to be reckoned with. They're not a they're not a bad side at all. They're a very capable side, and if we play to the level of the Slovakia game, we'll get battered. If we play to the level of yesterday, I think we'll lose. But on the other hand, I do also think that we have stepped it up a little bit. The Switzerland game was our best performance against the best team. Netherlands are a slightly better team again. If we can up the performance again, then I think we're very capable of getting a win. That's my view on it.
Finn, Adam?
I'll let Adam go first.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what's been said. I do think it'll be our toughest game. I do think they have plenty of quality and have shown that at times across the tournament. As much as they haven't been perfect, they've got here, I think, a little more convincingly than we have. Even if they did finish third in their group, it was a tough group, so we can let them off. Where I disagree is nothing to do with what's been said. It's all factually correct. It's just based on instinct. We were discussing after the Slovenia game that was at the stage where it looked very likely that the Dutch would be our opponents in the last 16. It didn't turn out that way, but here we are again. And right then, I just felt that they'd have too much for us. And really, I don't think my view has changed on that one. I know they'll come at us a little more, and I think we've seen enough in our sides for me to believe that we'll get on the score sheet simply because of the moments players we have and the fact that they may have a little more space this time around, particularly if the Dutch overcommit. But yeah, their attack just scares me, and based on a few dodgy moments, the fact that some of our players are out of form. Of course, we've mentioned Kyle Walker. If he finds that form, he'll be a huge asset to us. But it's a big if. Yeah, my instinct is they'll just have too much for us. But then again, my instinct was we'd lose to Switzerland as well. So maybe that's a good omen for everyone.
Maybe it is. Maybe you should be more positive, Adam. Finn?
I mentioned a couple of podcasts ago that I think the players, sort of their rhetoric coming out of games was that maybe they thought that the players' quality would get them out of a hole, and it certainly has up until this point. So I can just see that trend continuing. Us winning we're not keeping a clean sheet against the Netherlands, I don't think. Wout Weghorst gets mocked quite a lot for his sort of time at Man United, but generally he's a very effective target man, and I think he could cause us a lot of problems if they choose to go with him. But
certainly
I think
a very physical front three with Depay, sort of front line with Depay, Weghorst, Gakpo, players like that.
Yeah, for sure. And as good as Netherlands have been, and yes, they've got more overall quality and more chances to hurt us, I think, with the personnel that they've got. I do think they are actually a lot less defensively organised or have appeared to be than Switzerland in this tournament. And I think we've got enough players on the pitch or off the bench to score 2 goals. So I think we're going to win 2-1.
Yeah, certainly in the last 10 minutes against Turkey, there were a lot of chances that they sort of let in, and it did seem to be a bit sort of panic stations from the Dutch. Should we get predictions then before we go? So, Finn, you've said 2-1 win for England. Sam, what are you going for?
I'm going to go the same, 2-1 to England.
Adam? Adam, you're on mute.
There's always one, isn't there? Honestly, yeah. I'll just I'll be the miserable one in the corner saying 3-1 Netherlands and hoping I'm wrong.
Fair enough. I'm going to say it's going to be yet another game that goes to extra time. I think England will win it on penalties again, but I'm going to be slightly more centrist and say that 3 games going to extra time will knock the stuffing out of us a little bit going into the final, and we won't win that, unlike Sam, maybe, who thinks that it's written in the stars for us to win.
Spain or France, guys?
Oh, I think Spain. I think it's Spain's year.
Spain, and we lose in the final to Spain. But I said earlier, I think if we get France, we beat them. So if we beat the Netherlands, of course.
I think we lose to either Spain or France, but I think Spain beat.
As I said earlier, I think Spain are a better team than France at this tournament. I just think France will do a France at a major tournament and just edge past a better team. And I think Spain, not having Morata, who's been quite important to how they play, will just cost them in the fine margins. Adam?
I'm feeling that, as I think, Sam, it was you that mentioned earlier on, my instinct now is to get a repeat of the 2010 final, Spain-Netherlands, and Spain probably winning again. We'll see. A lot can happen. Results the other way around would not come as a huge surprise, particularly at this stage of the tournament. There's no obvious underdogs at this point. But for me, yeah, Spain favourites, beating the Dutch in the final. We'll see.
Looks like Gaz agrees with, I think, the consensus here, and it'll be a Spain victory in the final. Anyway, we won't take up any more of your Sunday night. Thank you, everybody who has listened live and everybody listening on all the usual podcast platforms. We will be back on Thursday night to discuss the Netherlands game and possibly discuss another major tournament final, which would be very exciting. But in the meantime, this has been the Green and White podcast brought to you by Argyle Life. It's a goodbye from Finn.
Bye.
It's a goodbye from Sam.
Goodbye.
It's a goodbye from Adam.
Goodbye.
And it's a goodbye from me. Thank you for listening and see you on Thursday.